Gators Breakdown, the Gators fan podcast, because there's never a dull moment in Gator Nation.
The Gators Breakdown podcast is ready to go. I'm your host, David Waters, and you can find me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. Joining me on this episode are a couple of guests, and you've heard him plenty of times here on Gators Breakdown. And he's back again. It's the Athletics' Will Sammon. Will, thanks for hopping on again.
Of course, David. Thanks for having me. Excited about this one.
Absolutely. And we're excited because joining Will and I've been waiting on this one for a while, and now is the perfect time. Former Gators tight end from 2004 to 2007 and current head football coach at Hawthorne High School, Cornelius Ingram, joins us here. And CI, thanks for hopping on Gators Breakdown.
Hey, Dave. Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited as well.
All right, we'll get into this. Of course, a lot of news out there with the tight end coach Larry Scott leaving for Howard, and the fan base out there on Twitter let it be known that they're on. You are on their short list, so we'll get into all of that. So before we get there, remember you can find Gators Breakdown on news4jax.com/Gators Breakdown. You'll find all the Gators Breakdown episodes there, as well as News4Jax coverage of the Gators. If you missed our Areas for Improvement episodes the last couple of weeks, check those out. And please share, rate, and review the show. And on social media, follow Gators Breakdown on Twitter and Facebook at Gators Breakdown. So, Cornelius, before we get into it here of everything that's going on, catch us up on what you've been doing your days since you've left Florida. You know, a stint in the NFL and now head coach in your hometown of Hawthorne.
Yep. I've been the head coach here. This past season was actually my 5th year. I'm also the head girls basketball coach here at Hawthorne. I'm the head weightlifting coach, head girls track and field coach. Then, I kind of coach my kids' football team as well. So I'm pretty busy with coaching, but Hawthorne is a very small town. A lot of the things that we do in the community, we know all the kids. It's easy for me to get my message across because a lot of the parents that a lot of the kids' parents that I know, it's easy, because I know everyone. And I've been able to have some success, I'll be honest, early because I can coach my way here at Hawthorne. Being the hometown guy, I have a lot of support from the outside community. And we've been able to help get some kids in school. And I'll be honest, it's been pretty fun the last 5 years.
Okay, so the big headline for Gator Nation this past weekend was, of course, Gators tight end coach Larry Scott leaving Florida to take the head coaching position at Howard. As soon as that was put out there, the focus for a lot of the fan base shifted to who does Florida replace him with? And Cornelius, that's where you come in. So some out there in Gator Nation, they brought your name up in regards to the position that's out there. So I have to ask the question, of course. The fan base will want to know: would you be interested in the tight end coach role for Florida, or a role in some capacity?
Okay, yeah, absolutely. But let's be clear. No coach, myself, I haven't reached out to anyone. Nobody has reached out to me. But I mean, I don't know about letting that kind of opportunity, slip up, especially a place where I played 2 sports. Winning national championships, 2 in football and the SEC championship in basketball, graduating from there. And then, just knowing a lot about the university even before I got there, just being 20 minutes away from Gainesville. So, of course, it'll be a dream job, perfect setup, but nothing has happened. And I'll be honest, I thought it was funny as well because when I knew about the position, a lot of people, they were atting me on Twitter. So I found out through Twitter, but no one has reached out to me about anything. But it will be a sweet setup, absolutely.
Hey, Cornelius, Will Sammon here. Just a quick one to kind of follow up on that. I'm always kind of curious, how a head high school coach like yourself, who has a background like you do in the sport, qualified player, everything like that, when you become a high school coach and say say your aspirations are to become like an on-field college coach, how does one make that transition? Because it doesn't seem like it's that direct of a transition. So like what are the steps that you know of that you hope, or some of your peers who are in the same boat hope to sort of accomplish to make that transition if that's what they aspire to do?
I think just, from the outside looking in, there's certain things that, that head coach at any university probably would want. And I think a lot of them would want college experience already, and I'm not saying a lot of high school coaches, they don't go straight into the college ranks and be a position coach at certain universities, because I've seen it happen on that level as well. So it's all about what that particular head coach wants. And I think the transition is the same. One thing about it, the X's and O's, they don't change. It's all about getting in there, demanding certain things out of your players. Of course, listening and following all the guidelines that university and that head coach want at that time. So I think the transition is a lot smoother because, like I said before, the X's and O's, they don't change. And I feel like if you have your head in the right place, you demand everything out of your position or whatever position that you're coaching, that makes the job a lot easier. And I know I've seen guys do it all the time. But from my standpoint, I've learned a lot from our football staff at the University of Florida right now. I'll be honest, a lot of the success I've had has been through Coach Meyer, Coach Mullen, Coach Gonzalez, Coach Hevesy. A lot of these guys taught me a lot on the offensive side of the ball, whether it's, it's terminology or route running combinations. A lot of the things that we call in our offense, I'll be honest, it comes from the University of Florida when I was there. So we've been able to have a lot of success. A lot of these coaches have instilled a lot in me throughout college and even after college. I have a good relationship with all of the coaches there now. So I'm excited about where our program is going at the University of Florida. And that's if I never worked there. I'm a diehard Gator, definitely a Gator for life. But you can tell, just by in recruiting, the type of players Coach Mullen and that staff have been bringing in, the success he's had in 2 years, I know we're only going to get better. So that's where I'm at with everything.
Cornelius, one advantage you have, if something like that was to happen, is what Dan Mullen expects from an offensive player, from a tight end. So, how is it playing tight end for Dan Mullen? Of course, there were different types of tight ends when you were there that offered different skill sets with you and Tate Casey. So, what is he looking for in the tight end?
Well, you know what? I will say this: I came in as elite 11 quarterback, and of course, Coach Meyer and Coach Mullen, they were at Utah at that time, and I redshirted my freshman year, and I played on the basketball team. So once I got back over to the football side, that's when the new staff had gotten there. But when I made my transition from quarterback to tight end, I was a little frustrated at the beginning, but I could tell that Coach Mullen from the offensive coordinator standpoint, and of course Coach Meyer from the head coach standpoint, they seen something in me that I didn't see in myself because I hadn't played another position my entire life. So making that transition was a little frustrating, and I didn't want to believe in it at that time. But the more they talked to me, I had some early success at the position, and it made it a lot smoother. And then, just going into my junior year, I'm thinking back like, wow, we just won a national championship against Ohio State. I played well in that national championship game and that SEC championship game, and I had some success during the regular season as well. But just having those conversations and understanding what they wanted from me out of the offense, they didn't put a whole lot on me because, of course, we had some great receivers around me at that time. So I was able to create some mismatch. They told me about that going into changing positions. And, once you have success and you see it and you're able to, have more years to do it, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun. And I think our coaching staff did a wonderful job, with me just, easing me into it because, like I said, I haven't played another position ever in my life. When I started playing football at the age of 7, my dad was my head coach. So, of course, I was the quarterback. So I played quarterback from the age of 7 up until I got to college. So just having good coaches to break down things and help you understand what's going on in the offense. I think, that's just the cherry on top.
So when they tell you that they want to switch your position, what do they say? Like, what are they kind of telling you as far as what their thought process was at that time?
Well, I think they wanted to do some different things in the slot. I'll be honest, they end up moving me around a lot in the offense where I was lined up outside, whether it was something one-on-one or I'd be in the slot or I'd be attached. But they knew I was a great athlete. I basically lined up outside more than I did as an attached tight end. And that was more of the reason why I came back to school for my senior year because, I talked it over with the coaches when I received my NFL letter grade. I was like, well, I can be a little higher than that. Let's put this on film. And I talked it over with the coaches, and they were all for it. So that was the main reason I went back to school for my senior year, even though I had a great junior season. I wanted to put some of those things that the NFL wanted to see on film. But, just being a great athlete and the coaches recognizing that and making sure I understood why this position switch. And, one thing about playing the position quarterback, when you want to get on the field, it's kind of hard because there's only one quarterback that can be on the field at one time. And with our offense, we were, 90% spread. So I felt like, hey, I can get on this field right now at another position. And I was able to have some success. So, kudos to the Florida coaching staff for looking out for me. I will say that.
Cornelius, of course, the quarterback position at Florida is always a hot button topic and no different right now, even with some success there.
Yep.
For you played into it when the offense shifted from Chris Leak to Tim Tebow. So what was the difference? And what did Dan Mullen and Urban Meyer change when Chris Leak, after 2006, wins a national championship, leads the Gators to a national championship, has some success, but then 2007, Tim Tebow comes in and leads an offense and wins a Heisman Trophy. So was there a philosophical shift in Leak to Tebow and the overall offense and the overall offense? Did that help you? What was the difference for you and the offense in that transition?
Well, of course, I mean, everyone knows that, Tim was a more pass and run guy. Chris, he was more so, a drop back passer. Once again, that just shows you, the type of coaches that we, had at that time and that we have right now, because as a coach for myself, and there's no way I'm putting myself on a level as Coach Meyer or Coach Mullen, but as a high school coach the year before last, I had a passing quarterback who could really throw the ball and he could actually run, which was Willie Jackson's son, who was a great quarterback for me. He probably threw for 2,500 yards, and this past season I had a guy who could really he was a good athlete who could run the ball more so than pass. So there's no way we were going to use our same offense from 2 years ago. And that's just from me being a high school coach. But I really understand what Coach Meyer, Coach Mullen, what they did with Chris. The offense can shift and do more running quarterback runs for Tim than Chris Leak. The best coaches adapt to their players around them. And like I said, that just shows you what kind of coaching staff we had at that time, what kind of coaching staff we have at the University of Florida right now. When you can adapt to your players and still have success and still win national championships, a lot of credit goes to those coaches. But it wasn't rocket science, just from the outside looking in. A lot of people knew Tim was probably a better athlete, so who could run the ball and wanted to run the ball. And Chris was a great drop back passer. So there were definitely different players at that time, but the coaches, they made those adjustments and still had success with it.
Either way, with no matter what Florida does at this position at quarterback, and I agree with everything you just said, they're going to have Kyle Pitts at tight end, and you mentioned not being always attached and running a little bit on the outside. So I was just kind of curious, how would you characterize what you saw from him in 2019, and what do you kind of think about what his future could be in 2020?
Oh man, it's very bright. I'm a huge fan. Let me say that first of all. But just watching him flourish in this offense. What's hard to do is, and a lot of people don't understand, when people almost look at you as the number one receiver, and you're still getting open, and you're still getting those attempts where they're trying to get you the ball, and you make plays. That's a true playmaker, because there's times where, we're going into games, and I know defensive coordinators are thinking, well, he's outside. Let me put my safety on him who can run and cover, or I'll just leave my cornerback on him. And then, and he's still going up making these spectacular plays down the field. And then, of course, if it's a linebacker, we feel like that's a matchup problem. So, what Coach what Coach Mullen has been able to do as far as call plays and put him in a position to make these plays, and he's making them, even when he knows he's basically, the number one guy. It's a lot of hard work and determination that goes into that. But I've been a big fan. I can't even imagine, what's going to happen this upcoming season, because, I know he'll be probably 15 pounds bigger, more muscle, maybe faster. So it'll only get better. It'll only get better. I know this. I will get to enjoy him one more year, and I'm pretty sure he'll be out of there.
Probably so. Yep. So you hit on it just a bit ago, but what are your thoughts on Mullen and what he's done so far in these two seasons? 10 wins year one, 11 wins in year two. Probably an obvious answer to this question, but are you surprised at all that Mullen's had some success right away at Florida?
I'm not surprised at all. I can remember his first year when he got back. I went over to spring practice, and Chris Patrick, who everyone calls CP, he's been one of the longest trainers there, probably in Florida football history. So, I was just picking his brain on the sideline, how is it around here? And he looked me dead on my eyeball and said, Coach Mullen has this program back upbeat. He has everybody walking around with a lot of energy, just like he did, Coach Meyer did back when we were in school. And I said, wow. And he was like, I'm not talking football players. He was talking about the people that work in the facility. Everything was upbeat. He said everything was back alive. And he said, I knew for a fact, the stuff on the field would be a little bit easier, because that's what he does. He called plays. He could put guys in the right position, probably better than anyone in the country. So I knew program had shifted, and just playing for Coach Mullen in the past, I'm not surprised at all. I'm not surprised at all. And what a lot of people don't understand, imagine when maybe 2 years from now, when he have all his recruits in, that's when we'll really be able to see it. And like I said, we've had 2 great years in his first 2 years. So, hats goes off to him, that coaching staff that's over there. I'm happy to be a part of it, just playing under these guys and being able to go back and watch practice or just be at the games, and you can feel it, and you can tell that, that we're almost back to where we want to be in a short period of time. So hats off to Coach Mullen and that coaching staff because they're doing a wonderful job right now.
All right, a couple more thoughts here from Cornelius Ingram before we let him go. And Cornelius, as a coach in the state, what is the reputation of Mullen from your peers in the high school coaching circle?
Oh, everyone loves it. And I'm really not that guy to talk about, other schools, universities in the state. But I mean, as of right now, he's the best in our state, and maybe I'm being biased, but, we can just look at, records and strength of schedule and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of people have the utmost respect for Coach Mullen. I think he also does a great job whenever there's camps, like Friday Night Lights or just, a passing camp. He interacts with probably everyone on that field. And I'm talking parents, I'm talking the water boys, just his attitude, the charisma that he has, he brings to the table. A lot of people feel comfortable around, Coach Mullen. And I know for a fact if my son was looking to, play football at a major university and that head coach is connecting with me, I'll feel safe with me sending my kid there to play football for him. And he has that type of vibe and relationship where he want to create those, paint those pictures for everyone to feel comfortable around him. And the best thing about it, me knowing him personally, that's him. I know some people might do it to get a certain kid or to have, a certain amount of 4 stars, 5 stars on their roster. But I know everything that Coach Mullen does is coming from a genuine place. And I think that's why we're getting those type of recruits, because a lot of these families, they feel great about their son going to the University of Florida and playing for a guy like Coach.
Okay, last thought here. National Signing Day is on Wednesday, and take us back to your recruitment a little bit. As you mentioned, you were a Elite 11 quarterback. You were being recruited by Ron Zook. There was the basketball side of it as well. Take us back to that time with National Signing Day coming up.
Well, for me, it was a fun time because up until my signing day, there really hadn't been probably any signing days in Hawthorne. So I can remember Bobby Bowden coming to campus in Hawthorne. A lot of the top coaches in the college ranks at that time, head coaches in the college ranks at that time, stopped in Hawthorne. So it was big for me, but it was more so big for my town and my community because no one had seen these coaches except for on TV. So, now you can see all of the top coaches you can think of, whether it was a football coach or a basketball coach, they're sitting in our cafeteria or they're sitting in our front office at Hawthorne where, there's not a whole lot going on. It was huge for me. So my recruitment process was not only for me, but it was for, the people in my community, the people that's in my town who actually still support me X amount of years later as the head coach here. So it was a fun time. I tell kids to always enjoy it because, they work hard for that moment. And I'm the type of guy, I'm not that old, so I give when it comes to my players. There's certain things I let them do because I'm not super old. I'm not old school. So you have to give a little, just to gain these kids' trust because, a lot of them, you don't know what they're going through at home. So recruitment process, I want to be a part of it. If my players have something going on in the community at church, I want to be a part of it because their parents or grandparents, supported me in their younger days. So, I respect the recruitment process. I know, these kids, they enjoy it as well. I actually love when they kind of set the stage for themselves and they make their big announcement. It's a time for them to enjoy it and their family as well. So the recruitment process is some fun to watch. I'm still a big fan of it. I tell my players all the time, I wish I could go back and do it again. I wouldn't wear this ugly shirt I wore on my signing day. It was big and ugly. But you know, I love it, and I respect what the kids have going on.
Awesome. Will, anything else?
Man, I just want to say thanks, Cornelius, for taking the time to chat with us. I mean, your insight is pretty great to hear from on a variety of topics. Just it's pretty. It would be hard to duplicate. So I just appreciate you being on the call with us, and honestly, just learned a lot from your experience. I am interested in the ugly shirt, though. I'd like to see a pic of that. But
I'll make sure. I'll find it and I'll send it to you. Well, is this a cell phone?
Yeah. If you don't mind sending that, I'd love to see that one.
I'll get that hooked up.
Yep, I'll make sure I send that right over.
Cornelius, the fanboy in me is excited right now, man. You're one of my favorite players, one of my favorite tight ends there to play at Florida. So hopefully, I know everything's been brought up because of everything happening at the tight end coach position for Florida. Whether it happens now, whether it happens later, man, I hope to see you in orange and blue.
Yep, I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Cornelius.
All right, thanks for having me.
All right, Will, that was good.
Yeah, man, I enjoyed it. He did an excellent job, I thought.
Yeah. So really good interview. Glad to have him here on Gators Breakdown. And of course, Will transition, and the reason he's on, of course, because as I mentioned, Larry Scott leaving for the Howard head coaching position there, and like I said, the fan base, one of the first names the fan base popped out just because of he has a coaching background, of course, as we just heard, is Cornelius Ingram. So his name was brought up, Tate Casey's name brought up because they're familiar with Dan Mullen and what he's asking his tight ends to do. But we'll see how it all shakes out. But before we move on, Will, what was your thoughts on Larry Scott moving on? You've been around this staff a lot, of course, the last couple of years, and Larry Scott seemed to be a well-liked, very respected name in the profession here.
Definitely. First, just a couple of the names that you mentioned with Tate, Cornelius. That happens with like every school, I feel like, too. So it's not just a UF thing where it's like, let's choose the players who played for Dan and put them on the sideline for us now. Like that happens everywhere. And it says a lot about those two guys, though. Like, don't get me wrong. With those guys, they know their stuff. I mean, obviously Tate's been around the program now for a couple of years, and he knows everything about this program and could tell you things inside and out about the game. And obviously we heard from Cornelius, so I have a lot of respect for those guys. That said, there's going to be so much interest. There's probably already so much interest in this job, no question. Top gig to get and an offense that really clicks together. And you mentioned it with Larry Scott. I mean, he was well liked on this Florida staff. He was well liked by Dan Mullen. He was a good fit. They often joked around because obviously John Hevesy, Billy Gonzalez, Greg Knox, and even Brian Johnson, for that matter, the last few years and a couple of years at Mississippi State, have worked with Dan Mullen for so long that a lot of like the verbiage or a lot of like the plays, it becomes second nature, and they'll just say it and they assume everybody in the room knows what they're talking about. Well, Larry often had to kind of catch himself up on things, because he wasn't with Dan Mullen for the last 15 years or whatever. It was just 2018 and 2019, but he really acclimated himself well to the staff, a guy they respected a lot, fit right in, and he did a really great job recruiting. And that's something that Dan Mullen is going to have to address with this hire is there are some big shoes to fill, in my opinion, at least. I think Larry Scott's very approachable, very personable guy when you talk to him, gets along with pretty much everybody that he speaks with, as far as I'm concerned, that I've heard. So from that point of view and from building relationships, that's what you're going to have to replace. And you have the carrot to sort of attract a lot of people with not just being at Florida, but also the ability to sort of be the guy who coaches Kyle Pitts, whether that's one last year or 2 last years or whatever. That's definitely a carrot that you could kind of hold to people because, you're coming into a really good situation. So certainly there's a lot of interest in this gig, and I'm sure they'll find somebody who checks all the boxes that they're looking for because there's going to be no shortage of good candidates.
Yeah, absolutely. I tweeted this out as soon as it was kind of announced and everybody started looking ahead of course, who could the replacement be, and absolutely agree. This is going to have to be somebody coming in and replacing and needing to be able to fill roles as a great coach and recruiter. Florida needs both here with this role to help fill out the staff, being able to go off field, go into somebody's house and recruit well, and also be that guy on the field on Saturdays and in practice and camps, of course, coaching these guys up. So we've seen it in Kyle Pitts the last 2 years, and that's the feather in Scott's cap. And as you said, that's a big selling point for this job as well. Somebody will want to put, hey, I coached probably a high draft round NFL draft pick there. So that is a big selling point here. And of course, Will, you and I discussed back on Saturday when it was announced here that this move was happening. Everybody's focus shifted to who the replacement could be here. Probably the most popular name I'm seeing, and I saw his name pop up as well when Mullen was making staff hires when he got hired here at Florida, and that's Chad Scott there, Plant City. So he's from the state of Florida. Coached at North Carolina under Larry Fedora there, and so Larry Fedora, of course, has a history at Florida as well. Also coached under Mike Leach for running backs at Texas Tech. So he's at West Virginia coaching running backs again, and I think co-offensive coordinator as well. Pretty good recruiter in his own right. But Chad Scott's name seemed to be the one to pop up the most.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter as well, just on message boards and whatnot. Want to be clear that I haven't heard any sort of candidate yet for this job whatsoever. No real sort of name with any sort of validity to it so far yet. There are names that sort of make sense when you kind of just spitball and you look at guys' resumes, even like Telly Lockett, for that matter, is a guy who has that sort of resume that stands out because he has the Florida background, that he's coached the position, he's been around some good programs. So there are guys like that, but I haven't heard of any sort of communication yet. I don't know if there's any. I don't even know how far like Dan Mullen has even got in that process, to be honest with you, with signing day coming up. And I know he was at the Super Bowl yesterday, for that matter, with his son. So that was a cool thing to kind of.
Maybe he found somebody there.
yeah, right. Maybe so. Doubt it, but maybe. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, it hasn't even been like announced yet that Larry's left. For that matter, it's just been reported. So like, I think we're kind of like still in the process of maybe even like identifying people who are good fits. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe like in an hour after this, to get there's a replacement in town. I doubt it, but how things work. It's pretty fluid. But that said, I haven't personally heard anybody connected to the gig quite yet. I do know there's going to be a lot of interest. I assume Dan Mullen's going to have 100 or so phone calls about it. And it's kind of one of those weird gigs for just him personally. Not weird, but just different than the other spots, because the tight end coach under Dan Mullen on the offensive staff has been the one that's seen like sort of like the most turnover. I mentioned it earlier that, John Hevesy at the offensive line has been with him forever. Greg Knox, running back's been with him since Mississippi State year one, really. Brian Johnson's been in and out, always been a guy of note, of notoriety. And then, of course, you got Billy Gonzalez at wide receiver. Tight end's a little bit different. They had a few different guys, none of whom I really would expect to come back into the fold at this point or right yet. The last guy before Larry Scott was DJ Looney, who is at ULL. So I don't know if there's interest there, but he was the last guy in 2017, and he was only with Dan Mullen for 1 year, was a former player under him, but was only a coach with him for 1 year in 2017, and then they went with Larry Scott at Florida. So there's not like a guy that kind of screams at you or jumps at you of, hey, this is the guy that makes the most sense. So it'd be interesting to see, like we already talked about, you kind of have to hit on both. Have to get a guy who has obviously the coaching chops, but also can recruit, particularly in Florida. And go back to the coaching quickly. It's not just Kyle Pitts, but also Zipper. I mean, Zipper is a guy who, 4-star kid. That's really the guy that I would point to of like, hey, you got a chance to develop this kid, because he didn't play a whole lot last year, was in some jumbo packages and whatnot. But, Kyle Pitts is already pretty good. But, Zipper is the one that you can kind of point to and be like, hey, this is the guy that you could develop. This is the guy that you can make better. And this is somebody that, when it's all said and done, you could be the guy who really was part of his maturity or part of his development process.
Well, I'll tell you why fans probably should be excited in finding a replacement, being confident, and Dan Mullen can find a replacement. Look, he had to do this a year ago. Torian Gray comes in, David Turner comes in. So Mullen's kind of proven there when he's had to make these changes, he's made some pretty good decisions so far. David Turner comes in, one of the best recruiters on the staff right now. If you look at what he's doing, especially up front on defense and being able to keep Gervin Dexter in when Georgia definitely was after him, and their recruiting prowess. But no, Gervin Dexter sticks with Florida, and David Turner's got a few other guys that he was in the mix on, and those guys are coming into Florida. And Torian Gray, of course, there was already the connection of coaching under Jim McElwain and coaching cornerbacks there. But look, the players had a lot of respect for him, and a lot of the players that are on the roster were recruited by him under McElwain. So, Mullen didn't really outthink himself there. There was a reason to bring somebody like Torian Gray in, and he did that. So recent and a short history at Florida for Dan Mullen, but he's made 2 good replacement hires already.
Yeah, and you could even go to Larry Scott for that matter, even his hiring, because like I said before, he wasn't a guy that had a track record with Dan Mullen. And the difference between, and I love working in Starkville and living there, and some of the best couple of years of like really my career, honestly, I really loved it there. But that said, it could be a little bit difficult to find, especially before they got going in those early years. It was difficult for Dan Mullen to find guys to come with him or to take an assistant job there. Until now, it's a little bit different, of course. I mean, obviously with 2014 and so on and so forth, things have improved and expectations are higher there now. But it wasn't always the case. Here at Florida, it's completely different. Where I don't want to say you get the pick of the litter here, but I mean, his phone's gonna be ringing off the hook, and it's different. Put it that way, as far as your ability to kind of zero in on a target that you really want, not just somebody that is the best of who's applied, sort of thing. And so that's what makes it interesting. And like you mentioned with Turner and Gray, and even I mentioned Scott for instance. He's had a track record so far at Florida of hitting on these guys when he's had to make a replacement or has had to make a hire. We've yet to see him really make a bad decision here.
All right, so that's it for what we know and our thoughts on the opening at the tight end coach position for the Gators here. And of course, the big news this week will be National Signing Day on Wednesday. So let's set the listeners up for that. And this is Wednesday Monday. Signing day is Wednesday. This is Monday. Took a couple of days before. We're about midday on Monday on this recording. So as of this Monday, right now, 2 days before National Signing Day, the Gators sit at number 8 in the 24/7 Sports Composite. And that's the metric used here, as it takes the average from 24/7 Sports, Rivals, and ESPN, puts it all together, and comes out with its number there. So the Gators are 7th on 24/7, 7th on Rivals, and 8th on ESPN in the recruiting rankings. So that's 7th, good for 7th on the 24/7 Sports Composite, and that only gets Florida 6th in the SEC. So the rankings going into signing day look like this: Georgia number 1, Alabama number 2, Clemson number 3, LSU 4, Ohio State 5, Texas A&M 6, and Auburn 7. So my bad. Florida's 8th in the 24/7 Sports Composite. 8th, my bad there. So yes, behind all those other SEC teams. 6th in the SEC. So rounding out the top 10, Oklahoma's at 9, and Michigan comes in at 10. So we've talked about it previously a lot, Will, but looking at it going into signing day, Florida only, every year, of course, we sit here and say, every year Florida has to play Georgia and LSU. So looking at this list, Alabama's in front. Texas A&M's up front. Auburn is in front of Florida for right now. But Florida doesn't have to play all those teams every year. You may have to play them in the SEC championship game, of course. But there's 2 teams, Georgia and LSU, that are number 1 and number 4. And the Gators have to play those teams every year.
Yeah, but you know what, David? Those, unless they've changed in the past few hours that I've looked at them, those rankings don't account for the transfers, though, right?
Correct.
So, yes, there's a gap between those couple of teams in Florida's class for this particular class, but I think that if you just look at it that way, you sort of do shortchange the roster improvements that have been made, because 3 out of the 4 5-stars are now transfers that don't really sort of count, but they'll certainly be on the field. Well, at least I want to say Cox will be on the field in 2020, of course, after sitting out 2019. Shorter, I don't really know his personal situation, but I'd assume that he has to sit out until otherwise notified on that one. And then Lingard, 5-star from Miami, certainly has a strong personal case to make, considering his family situation. That's a legitimate, unfortunate situation, and he'd be playing closer to home, so that makes sense. So all that to say, whether they're playing in 2020 or 2021, they're similar in that, hey, they're added to this. They're added guys who are taking scholarships this year, this cycle, and so like they, in my opinion, have to be included, and you kind of have to look at it through that lens too, because maybe it's a little bit unorthodox or what, but, Dan Mullen has not settled just with the high school recruits, and he's utilized the transfer portal to plug in gaps and make roster, not only plug in gaps, but make huge roster additions and improvements where they are deficient, i.e. running back or in the future, or wide receiver in the future. So I don't look at this as that big of a gap between the elites this time, because I also, quite frankly, like this signing class for them, particularly after the Xavier Henderson edition, because I looked at it as, okay, like a lot of these defensive guys, you would have loved to have had Tim Smith in the fold in December to sort of add to the surplus of defensive line talent that you had. But okay, still, you had a pretty good group there. You also addressed the deficiency in the secondary, so great. But what you needed was offensive playmakers, or at least one or two, and you certainly added that with Shorter and Henderson. So for me, I look at this as a really good class all of a sudden, and with only minimal things on your agenda that you have to accomplish on Wednesday. So if I'm rating it, I'm rating it pretty favorably for the Gators, regardless of exactly where they stand in the recruiting rankings or the ratings as far as the SEC goes.
Yeah, couldn't agree more there. As you said, filled the needs, offensive line, defensive front, in the secondary, of course. And look, the most likely scenario right now for Florida is at least adding Avonte Williams here. That seems to be the way it's trending right now. If you add him, it boosts their score to 279.84 and would put Florida ahead of Auburn if the Tigers don't add anyone else. Get somebody else, say, I'm not predicting this, but say you get a highly touted running back like Jahmyr Gibbs, and then you potentially jump Texas A&M if they don't add anybody else as well. So different ways to look at it if you're into the minute rankings there of how Florida can even raise its stature on National Signing Day. But absolutely, Will, I agree that the transfers, hitting needs, Florida did that. So getting Avonte Williams will be great, and anything past that is I think gravy for Florida fans. Yes, you want to build depth. You want to build depth with elite players, and if Florida can add some guys that they feel add quality depth, they will. But what, as you said, what Florida has in this class, filling the needs, hitting the transfer portal, I mean, it's hard to complain too much about this class.
I mean, like, you look at who's left, right? And it's DeMarcus Beckwith, who I think is pretty talented, great athlete. A running back, and I think Gibbs is excellent. I think he's great. If he goes to Georgia Tech, I mean, that's a hell of a sign for Georgia Tech. Tell you that much, because he'd be a hell of a sign for Florida, for that matter. I think the world of his talent. But just looking at the list of guys who are sort of like on the borderline on sort of unsigned targets for Florida, you got Clayton, of course, the other running back who's committed to Colorado. Cedric Van Pren, the center, big time recruit who's committed to Georgia. I guess that's pretty much it. The defensive end, who's been kind of flirting with the Texas programs, Princely. So you got a couple of guys there, but I look at the list and I say, okay, I think Williams would probably make or break the day, but does anybody else really make or break the day for you? For me, not so much. I mean, the running back,
Gibbs would make it, but he wouldn't necessarily break it.
That's a great way to put it. Yeah, I'm with you on that. Just because like I said, I can't say much more about how much I think of him. Because you added Lingard, so it's if they didn't add him, then I'd say to myself, okay, they really should, because you don't know 1 year to the next who's going to be on your team. Maybe somebody transfers, what have you. I think Pierce is great, but there's a lot of unproven production after him, particularly the last couple of years with Davis battling injuries, because he's talented, he has the potential, but he's battled injuries and didn't often get the opportunities last year, so you just don't know. But all that to say, they added Lingard, so it's like I don't see like the huge need anymore that you did in December, where it was like, okay, yeah, I could be talked into them already having 4 guys, whatever. But I still say to myself, you should add somebody if you can, and somebody of note. Now, if you miss on the Gibbs guy, it's not the end of the world for me for Florida, because you already have Lingard. So that's the way I look at it. Maybe I'm being too nice. Maybe I woke up Monday morning and I was in too good of a mood, but I don't know. I mean, I just look at it as you accomplished a lot in December. You didn't settle and you added guys, whether that was Henderson, Shorter, or Lingard, and you made your team better for 2020 and 2021. So I don't know. I like how things are set up, and if they only get Williams and sign Henderson, okay, that's the way I look at it, at least. Maybe like I said, maybe I'm being too kind here.
Yeah, I mean, I've been called too critical for recruiting sometimes, but I absolutely agree with you. They went all in on DeMarcus Bowman, they didn't get him. That kind of transition into going all out on Gibbs, and hopefully they get him, and we'll see. If they don't, I have no problem with not pushing for Clayton, saving that scholarship for next year, and moving on. Like you just said, Florida with the addition of Lingard, that gave Florida some flexibility here of going after what probably they consider the best back out there, what many consider the best unsigned back out there besides Zach Evans right now. So those are the 2 names that are out there, the 2 big time running backs, and Florida is putting it all out there for Gibbs. You even seen now, Will, I don't know if you've noticed it the past couple of days, of Florida's offensive linemen out there tweeting pictures of them and Gibbs together. So maybe it's one final push to say, hey, come on, man. Come to Florida. This is what we got here. You spend a couple of days with us. You know us. We know you've been committed to Georgia Tech, but we can do something special together here at Florida.
That's funny. I actually didn't see that. I've been a little bit off Twitter the last couple of days.
Yeah, it's been Isaiah Walker, Richie Leonard, and Braun's dad all tweeted the same picture of the offensive lineman and Gibbs together.
Well, if Josh Braun's father is telling me something, I'm probably going to do it because he's a little bit intimidating. So that's just me. But that's cool. I didn't see that actually. And you mentioned Evans. I mean, he's not completely crossed off the list as far as I understand it. I mean, things could change with that kid by the every 15 minutes. That's the way it seems. So I don't want to throw something out there that's not true, or that was true 24 hours ago that isn't true now. But I mean, if he's out there, you never know. So I don't want to cross him off the list completely. But yeah, I mean, these situations can be a little bit fluid. I mean, even Williams for that matter. I mean, like, he could wake up one day and just decide to do something. Who knows? You assume that he's going to be committed to Florida, but yeah.
Don't say that.
Exactly. Right. But I mean, he's had a kind of like an up. I always thought that kid was going to go to Florida from day one. So I don't think a lot of people did, but it's just been a kind of a. He hasn't done a whole lot of interviews, so who knows? I mean,
yeah, there was the crazy Oregon commit, and did anybody really see him going from Florida to Oregon? So
nobody did, and everybody kind of sees him going to Florida, myself included. But I'm just trying to make a point that if something happens that's a surprise on Wednesday, it wouldn't be the first time on signing day that we see a surprise. I'm not saying that there will be. Quite frankly, I'm thinking that there won't be, but you never know.
Yeah, a couple quick hitters here before we wrap it up, dealing with recruiting here. Of course, you mentioned DeMarcus Beckwith there. We'll see if Scott's departure hurts that. It looks like a 50-50 battle between Florida and Tennessee right now. He was in Knoxville yesterday on Sunday, I believe. Didn't look like he was on campus, but he was in Knoxville. So we'll see if that means anything. We'll see if the Scott departure means anything, how close he was to him. We know Scott was instrumental in that recruitment, but we'll see how much that matters. And, Florida probably won't have a replacement before Wednesday. I mean, that's just a guess. I have no idea. But if they do hire someone, I don't know if that makes an effect on Beckwith's decision or not. A couple other players here. Mark Britt also looks like Ole Miss. Some are claiming that might be a battle between Florida and Ole Miss now, 50-50. I've been told by a couple people now, if he has the grades, he's getting into Florida. that Britt will be a Gator if he has the grades to get in. So that's one to look out there. And we'll see what happens with wide receiver Leonard Manuel. He will not be signing on Wednesday that we know of. That's the last thing he said about it. He'll wait till April, I'm sure, till some test scores come back. And that's kind of where it stands right now as we head into Wednesday.
Yeah, you kind of nailed everything right there. Great summary, David. but yeah, that's pretty much as far. I'm kind of with you as far as what I've heard. You have a couple of kids that are just kind of questionable, whether that's with grades or just whatever situation you don't know yet. Hopefully, we get some clarity on Wednesday. But like you mentioned, with a couple of those kids, maybe it could even stretch out further than that. So. Yeah, we'll see. I mean, if things aren't clarified by Wednesday, there's still some time. Obviously, you could sign a little bit later, of course, whatever. You could be added. We've seen that before. But yeah, there's things that remain to be seen with Britt and Leonard Manuel, of course, who's been committed to Florida, I guess, but just had a kind of a different route so far with his high school career and trying to get on track. So we'll see how things kind of unfold. But regardless, like I said earlier, it's a pretty good class. And if you look at it in its entirety and you add the transfers up, yeah, they accomplished probably what they needed to accomplish across the board, I'd say.
Absolutely agree. And Will, one more thought I want to get from you, because I believe it was last week you released on The Athletic an update on DeJuan Black. Of course, he was supposed to be in last year's class, had to go the JUCO route. What you unearthed in talking with Black?
Yeah, it seemed like he was pretty focused. I mean, there's still a lot that he has to he mentioned his GPA. I'm not sure about that number, to be frank with you. There's no way I could kind of prove that. So I just want to be clear that's what he said. And I'm not saying that he's lying about it, but you just don't know. I mean, and that could change from one semester to the next. And just from covering junior college recruiting in the past, you kind of take it one semester at a time with guys, because things can change and situations can change, whether that's on the field or off the field. But for now, he does seem like things are in line for him to be a recruit for Florida as part of their 2021 recruiting class. He had a nice season. His team won the JUCO National Championship. He finished with around 50 tackles, played a lot of different positions for them. He came off the edge, played some corner, played some safety, played some, he did everything. He was kind of one of those guys that whatever they needed on that night is what he did. As far as Florida goes, he was telling me that they see him as more of a nickel safety in the future, which was always the role that made sense to me. I know sometimes people attach him to the linebacker position, and I'm sure he could do that, but just from covering him in high school a few years ago and just from following his career, he always seemed to me that nickel spot was always the best fit. But we got some time left before that even becomes really something that we should be talking about. For now, it's just a matter of can he sustain and can he continue to make some improvement, and he just needs to stay on track with his academics. That's the biggest thing. The talent is there, but what's gonna have to happen is he has to stay on his academics in order for him to be a realistic addition in 2021.
All right, update on DeJuan Black there from Will Sammon and The Athletic. What you got up this week on The Athletic with signing day coming up?
Well, Jervon Dexter is their first 5-star signee under Dan Mullen, and so that's a big deal. We mentioned the 5-star additions who are transfers, but Dexter is going to be the first guy who's rated as a high school kid who signs as a high school kid to Florida under Dan Mullen. And so I thought it would be interesting to sort of poll a few high school coaches who coached against him and just ask them point blank, was this kid a 5-star in your opinion? Did you coach against a 5-star? What did you think of his game? Because he is kind of raw, and he's a kid who has only played high school football for a couple of years. Was kind of more of a basketball guy from what I understand. So some interesting comments from a couple of the high school coaches who coached against him. So I'm eager to publish that this week, perhaps as early as this afternoon, Monday afternoon, or Tuesday morning.
Awesome. Yeah, I look forward to that one. And as you said, for Florida, first 5-star recruit under Dan Mullen. So that's Will Sammon from The Athletic. You can go to theathletic.com or download their app for all the stories there. I'm the host of Gators Breakdown, David Waters. You can follow me on Twitter at GatorDave_SEC. And Will, man, thanks for joining me once again.
Oh, man, great episode. Enjoyed it. Thanks again for having me, as always.
All right, guys and girls out there, thanks for listening to this episode of Gators Breakdown.